Welcome to WTF, West Bank Talks Finance, the podcast that turns WTF moments into knowledge that you can use to make informed financial decisions. Subscribe to get notifications when we release new episodes. Hi, I'm Lebo Khawaketse and I look after marketing and communication for West Bank. Today we are talking about selling your car. And in studio with me, I've got Papi Mabele, who is the owner of Twofold, very much involved in motoring and tech content. Welcome, Papi.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, good. And I've got Funzai Maiwashe, who is a sales operations manager at West Bank. Welcome, Funzani.
Thanks for the invite, Levo.
Oh, good. So, Jane, selling your car. You know, you've owned this piece of metal for a bit, and now you're at a point where you want to sell it. What are the key things that one needs to be aware of when they're about to sell their car?
You have to have a look at financing, whether obviously you still have a loan to repay, some money or funds left behind to settle on that. And also, I think the most, I want to say tedious, well, in my experience, is having all the documentation ready for that, actually, before you even get to, thinking about walking into a dealership and all of that. Just making sure that you have, all the documentation that you need to be able to sell your vehicle.
And what would that be, if I can maybe ask, with the documentation? Just maybe take us through a couple of them, sorry.
Sure. It'll be looking at, the ownership documents,
Okay.
the identification and registration of the vehicle itself. Unfortunately, some of them you can only get once you've repaid, your loan to whoever is holding it for you. It's documents such as that. Also, your service history as well. You need that documented as well. Make sure that you have it readily available. Those are the few that I can think of top of my mind, that you need to have and consider having, or at least have sight of, to know exactly where they are so that you can pass them over, as well as your transfer documents as well with the, license department as well. You need to fill out that paper. That yellow paper.
The yellow paper.
Yes, the yellow paper. Very, very also tedious process and form to fill out, but it's necessary to do that.
Great. And I mean, Funzani, I've bought my car for 200,000 3 years ago. Now I want to sell it. In terms of the value, what impact does that have when I eventually sell my car?
I think it depends on who you are selling to. So if you want to score more, surely you'll have to go the route of selling it privately.
Okay.
But just to exchange the car and have something that you can drive, that's when you'll go to the dealer. But obviously, how you look after your car as well does impact the value of the car. The documentation that you just mentioned that you need to have, the service history, those are things that will impact the value of your car.
Okay.
The mileage as well, because often than not, the car with too much mileage, people then perceive that it has traveled a lot and then the warranty is even worse. But if maybe it's well maintained, it's the car that you are driving locally, then it can still hold its value.
Interesting. And Papi, Funzani talks about high mileage. How high is high? High can be subjective, right?
It can be. It can be subjective. Also, look, as a consumer or a driver, your needs would vary as to how you're using the vehicle, what you're doing with it, your lifestyle as well, all comes into play with that. You see, so that will be the determiner as to how high is the mileage on your vehicle also.
Okay.
I think one thing also that plays a huge, factor in that is, aftermarket fittings that you would put into your vehicle in general itself. It's nice to own a vehicle and to make it your own. Yes, personalize it by all means, but not to fit any outlandish, accessories and all those sort of things. That can play, a huge part as to how your vehicle is valued when you want to resell it again. Also, a lot of dealerships I've seen that they shy away from actually, getting involved with the sale of the vehicle that's been heavily modified.
Okay.
Because also for someone else looking to purchase a vehicle, it's very hard to look at piece that's been modified and to say, yes, I'm going to spend my money on that. So that's something to be very cautious as to what you're doing with your vehicle, especially when you have the plan or intention to sell it at a later stage.
So it's all fair and well to make my car look cool for me, but then that may mess up the value. Is that what you're saying?
Definitely.
Okay,
Definitely.
because it might not be the same thing for the next person.
Exactly.
Another thing becomes that, or when it comes to insurance, it's a challenge sometimes when you customize it too much, because the insurance will just go unnecessarily, and then you find that you're just kind of shooting yourself on the foot.
Interesting. And I mean, when it comes to insurance specifically, I mean, can you give us an example of why would insurance be hesitant of a modification or an extra or an addition? Is it the wheels? Is it the sound? Is it the sunroof that I add that that could make it higher and the insurance rejects? Can you give us an example?
The sound most of the time, because
Okay.
obviously as you modify to put maybe a high sound, insurance knows that the car can be stolen at any time. It attracts unnecessary attention.
Sure.
So that's one big example that and it's good that whatever you're adding to the car, you contact insurance to try.
So check with them.
Yes, to try and cover it, because often they're not to find that people do a whole lot of changes, but they don't notify insurance. The day that you go and claim, they come and check that the car that you have is no longer the one that they insured, and they will then dispute the claim.
So you'd have modified it to that extent that it's completely different. But I see you nod.
It does happen. It does happen. And with insurance claims also, it will happen. If they cannot recognize it from what you've described it as per your policy, then it's ground for them to possibly decline it.
Okay. But park modifications and extras and accessories on the side. Let's look at the actual value of the car. Does the type of a car have any impact on the value?
Normally cars depreciate, just obviously depending on how strong is the brand, and how attractive is the brand. You'll still, even maybe it's depreciating or maybe the mileage is high, but you'll find that the brand still kind of attract attention, and then it can still sell very well.
So it boils down to the brand, how much people love the brand and how that impacts value.
Different brands kind of hold value differently. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. And then there's this thing that gets thrown around quite a lot, called break-even analysis, break-even this, then, and the other. What is that, and what impact does it have when I'm trying to sell my car?
You get to a break-even when your debt and the value of the car is more or less similar. So at a stage where you can sell it and then maybe get to settle what you still owe with the bank. But when people maybe quickly trade in their vehicle and then you want to settle as early as possible, that's when you'll have a problem, because you'll find that what you still owe the bank and what maybe the buyer is willing to pay wouldn't match.
Okay, interesting. Now, Papi, back to you in your space, when it comes to, I know you do a lot of content creation and you engage quite a lot with dealers. What is the landscape like now in terms of sales, car sales, people selling their cars? What does it look like now? And I ask because we are in a very strained macroeconomic environment.
Just from my interaction with, dealers and consumers in general, what we're seeing is that there's a lot of, uptake or interest in the second-hand or pre-owned market. Just because, as you said, we are consumers also are very constrained. So that's where they're playing in their favor, making use of what they can afford and what they have by looking at that, pre-owned and second-hand market. We're not seeing, from my interactions with them, a lot of uptake in the new market for new vehicles. Because people generally just want, something that'll get them from point A to B safely at that. More so economically, that's what they're looking at also. So I want to say, just based on those interactions itself, people are shying away from your flashy leisure, I want to say premium vehicles, but more into your economical buys and cars that fit the purpose and the need of what they're looking for and what they want to achieve.
So your personal needs still becomes quite important.
Definitely, and that's what consumers are paying a lot more attention to lately. They'll assess what they do on a weekly, on a daily basis, and to find the vehicle that fits that, more so as to splurging out into something that it looks good when people see you in it, but in the pocket it doesn't make sense. So
Sure.
yeah, that's what consumers and that's what we're finding.
And Funzani, you want to add?
Yes, it becomes easier to negotiate for a discount on a pre-owned vehicle than new, because new, you'll find that most of the time the manufacturer will just throw money on the bonnet, and that can be what will be considered as part of the discount. But on the used one, because it will be going with the price that the seller will be telling you, so it becomes easier for you to then negotiate to where you can be comfortable. And second to that, I mean, we might be driving the same car. Mine is new, yours is used, but no year model is written in any car. So at the end of the day, we're driving the same model, the same car. But mine, found that I got it a bit affordable because it was used and it was well negotiated.
You said throw money on the bonnet. The manufacturer can throw money on the bonnet. You want to explain that? What does that mean?
So it's a discount that manufacturer will subsidize franchise dealership with, to try and make sure that they get the installment that the customers can afford.
So it's a way that the manufacturer can incentivize the dealer
to discount
the car and make it accessible.
Yes.
Interesting. And I mean, what affects when you do this trade-in that I was speaking about earlier, what affects the trade-in value of a car? What are the things? I know we've loosely touched on a few, but specifically, what are the things that affect the trade-in value of a car when you're about to sell it?
I think the year of the car, how old is your car?
Okay.
The make, the model of the car does impact that. Sometimes, I mean, the location where you're trying to sell your car, are you going to attract or find buyers of the kind of car that you're selling? And again, what you also touch on, how you look after your car, the interior, the features of the car that you have as well, like your leather seat, how you protect it, bull bar, tow bars, sunroof, whatever you might have added. So that on its own add more value to your car.
Before we close, gents, you've given quite interesting nuggets and useful information for somebody who is selling their car. Now you've got 1 minute in a lift with somebody who's just about to sell their car. What is that one piece of advice that you would give to somebody who's about to sell their car? Funzani?
I think you need to make sure that you're not desperate. You cannot be seen as if you are rushing. So it's very important that when you're selling your car, you consider options that are there, and then you have option of private to private, or you'll end up getting much value of it. You have the option of just taking to the dealer, and then they'll give you what they think your car is worth. And then obviously speaking on behalf of the bank, private to private, obviously you'll have your DECRA there.
DECRA is the provider who does assessments, right? Yeah,
they do the roadworthy. They check if the car is still in good condition, and then you end up having to find a buyer.
Okay.
But yeah, most I think safe tips as well. Do it in an open space, maybe close to police station if you already find the buyer.
Sure.
During the day, you got to take a companion as well, just to make sure that you're safe. It can be a family member. And maybe possibly even if you're selling it yourself, go to the police station, have that affidavit over and above any other agreement that you'll be signing with the person. The affidavit will be the agreement between the buyer and the seller, just to put what you have agreed on paper in front of the Commission of Oath, so that tomorrow, should you wish to challenge something, you can then be able to refer back to what you have agreed between the two.
Interesting. Papi, what is your 1 minute tip to this person who's about to sell their car?
Sure, I would definitely say or make sure that you have all your documents in place, or sight thereof at least. And then just consider yourself whether it's actually the right time to be selling your vehicle. Just talking about the break-even point, whether you can it's the right time to let it go. You've paid much of your debt, and then considering the value that you will get for it when you sell your vehicle. So I would say those two, definitely have a look at those.
Interesting. Yeah, thanks, gents. There you have it. Selling your car is just as important as buying your car in terms of key considerations. Do your research, take your time, be patient, and do not come across as desperate, because they will pick it up and you may end up having a raw deal. Also, you've got options. value those options, compare them, and really take your time. And I think another important thing, make sure that you look after that car if there's a plan to sell it. The better you look after it, the better the value. And lastly, make sure that all your documents are in place. Service document, the license and disc are paid and they're up to date. And as Funzani has explained, over and above that, go to the police station and at least have an affidavit, just to be on the safe side. Thank you. Thank you, gents.
Thanks for your time, Lebo.
Thanks for listening. We hope that you found it useful. Now go and subscribe to be notified when our next informative episode is available.